start streaming. Let's see. I guess Emerson's not here today, so hopefully I'm going to do this correctly. Let's see. I guess Emerson's not here today, so I hear the feedback. Hopefully I think that's a good sign. All right. We're streaming. Let's see. Welcome, everybody. My name is Art Pinsof. I'm the host of the Ocean to Ocean interview show on Nothing Media. This show is called Nothing Happening. Emerson came up with that clever title. He's usually here helping me today behind the scenes. So forgive me if I make any mistakes technically, but I think we're up and running. Okay, and if you'd like to join us, go to the YouTube stream if you're on Facebook, and the YouTube stream has it has the link to this Zoom. So if you'd like to join us to speak, you're welcome to. I host meetings like this one twice a week, every week, Wednesday nights and Sunday afternoons here in the States. So if you like this meeting, or if you'd like to, if this time doesn't work for you right now, and you're welcome to message me on Facebook. In fact, if you like anything that I do, please add me on Facebook as a friend, and so you could stay updated with what I've got going on. I'm going to start my own YouTube channel soon. Previously, I said you could contact me by email, but I'm still not great at checking my email. So if you could message me on Facebook, if you'd like more information about my own private meeting, or and if you don't have a Facebook account, maybe message from a friend's Facebook account, but I'm easy to find on Facebook. So in my meeting, I usually start with a minute or two of silence. I haven't done that for too many of these nothing meetings, but let's go ahead and do it this time. We'll start with a minute of silence. All right. Welcome to Nothing Happening. You know, I made the joke that maybe I'll start a YouTube channel called Something Media. And the show could just as easily be called Everything Happening, or Something Happening, or Anything Happening, or This, etc. The language is so secondary, tertiary, tangential. It's like science experiment that has steam flowing off of it. You know, the steam is the language, but the actual chemistry inside of the bottles is what is happening. You know, I saw a lecture from Noam Chomsky, or an interview with Noam Chomsky on this really excellent YouTube channel called The Theory of Everything with Carl something or another. And Noam said that dogs know about 10 to 15 words, but they can't make sentences. And humans, what's so interesting about us is that we can make sentences. And once you can string 2 or 3 words together and create new meanings or additional meanings out of very simple words, from there it just gets, it goes into infinity. That's what Noam Chomsky said. He said language is mathematically infinite in what it can lead to and create. And this is where the confusion lies for everybody. And it's where the excitement lies for everybody. It's the Tower of Babel, but it's also just, you know, the play of 10,000 things, dancing colors. And there's a lot of spirituality that focuses on being in the now, being in the silence, stillness, being quiet, this sort of thing. And I think that's, you know, really great. It's a great counterbalance to what Western culture has created the last, you know, thousands of years, which is, you know, tens of thousands or millions of words where somebody says, you know, industrial age or computer age, information age, or you can mention the name of a person, Noam Chomsky, or, you know, Jesus Christ, or Tony Parsons. And when you hear the name, your mind immediately makes a million connections, way too many for you to possibly be conscious of. You know, I was like, sometimes I just get amazed at how some funny thing will happen, a little sequence of events, and my brain will, like, in less than a second, just dig up a memory that this reminded it of, that happened 11 years ago or last month, that I could never do that. I could never consciously just dig up memories, but the mind just does it. So I think there seems to be a lot of confusion around there being a correct or optimal way to think, or the idea that maybe we could not think and just act in a way like an animal, you know. And I think, you know, like the saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I think all of the greatest spiritual guides and teachers say things that are simultaneously liberating to those with an open mind and heart who resonate for whatever reason with that person or that way of the way they're saying it. But simultaneously, it creates the road to hell. Hell as a metaphor in this case, just meaning confusion and, you know, the seeking energy getting, you know, greater, you know, in the sense of frustration coming. Even when I say the seeking energy, I'm assuming the majority of this audience has heard that phrase before, because I think most people who are watching this are familiar with Tony Parsons or Jim Newman or somebody from that, you know, like lineage, if you allow me to use that phrase lightly, because I know they wouldn't consider it a lineage, but it is a series of, you know, language. You know, it's funny how language and lineage sound so similar, you know, but it's the language of Tony is passed on down to Anna Brown through Jim Newman, you know, and this goes on and on, you know, like Ramana Maharshi. It's so funny to me when people criticize certain things Ramana Maharshi said, because he really was just using the same language that Shankara used in many cases, or that Patanjali used. And then they were using the same language that went back to the Upanishads or other ancient parts of the Vedas. And then, of course, there's the Buddhist lineage, which I personally know very little about. I've been talking to Benjamin Smythe recently, and he seems very familiar with that language, which is great. It's exciting to hear a new language, hear new definitions. And he informed me that the word enlightenment, as defined by the Buddha, is very rarely described accurately. It's just the word has a totally different meaning to people now than what was meant by the Buddha, who may have been the one who came up with it. I don't even know if that's true or not, but I haven't looked it up on Wikipedia yet. And yeah, if this meeting starts to slow down, if we run out of people that want to speak or ask questions and I run out of steam, then, you know, I've been doing a deep dive into the language and works, books and lectures of Robert Saltzman recently. So I'll just share some of my quotes and notes that I'm preparing for an interview with Robert that I'm going to do in about a week and a half from now. So, yeah, if you've been following me in general on this channel or these meetings lately, you might be aware that one of my favorite things to talk about for the past few months has been the difference between a masculine or feminine expression of non-duality. And, you know, which could also be framed as as yin and yang energy, or yeah, that's good enough. You know, and I love sayings like, first there's mountains, then there's no mountains, then there's mountains again. I love the Shankara saying of, you know, the world is illusion, God is reality, the world is God. And right behind me, I have this moon that's a half moon. We recently just had a half moon, apparently. I haven't verified that, but someone told me that this morning. And I love the metaphor of the half moon. This is also something I heard is from some school of Buddhism or Zen Buddhism, this idea of a half moon awakening, meaning an awakening to see that there's no thing, but not necessarily to, you know, for lack of a better word, integrate that. Although the word integrate leads to more discussion. It seems like it's the kind of word that would imply there's more to do and more to get to, which from my perspective, there is. Even though there's nothing that's really art Pinsof. Every cell in this body is different than what composed it 10 years ago. You know, I don't know if that's true, but I think that's somewhat true. And so what the hell is art Pinsof? You know, there's no part of the brain where art Pinsof lives. You know, this is just the evolution of the universe, maybe appearing as this after whatever billions of years. And you know, it's like I was watching some video of plankton, you know, which are these very, very microscopic tiny sea creatures that are so beautiful, just like biofluorescence everywhere. And oh gosh, just look it up. Look up video HD footage of plankton. It's incredible. And I was looking at it and I was like, oh my God, like, so like in a pint of water in the ocean, there could be thousands, I don't even know how many, thousands of life forms just living a life just like us, eating, sleeping, dying, resting, running, swimming. I mean, I'm using those words loosely because obviously sea creatures don't run. They might not even sleep, I don't know, but they must eat and excrete, eliminate. So, you know, Gurdjieff said, you know, Gurdjieff was one of the teachers I began my journey with 20 years ago. And he said that everything is food for something else and eating something smaller than it, everything. And he had some maybe a little bit more mystical beliefs around that, but I think even in a very grounded way, that seems quite true to me. Yeah, reproducing. Thank you, Randall. That's another thing that everything seems to do. Yeah. And yeah, and Nisargadatta said that everything is food going in and food going out. Everything. It's all food. It's a very strange way to look at it. I see Eugene here in the Zoom meeting eating, and whatever he's eating is some form of life that the sun put energy into and that minerals and vitamins somehow got into that are feeding his body. It's incredible. And then once he, eliminates, then maybe flies will feed off of that somehow, or who knows what. The cycle of life is endless. When this body dies, it's food for the worms or whatever, which is great. I wouldn't want it to go to waste. Or maybe, I don't know, I think I'm signed up as an organ donor if I were to die suddenly. So, the cycle of life just goes on. Everything feeds into everything. And so, these are just some ideas I'm opening this discussion with. Once I shut up for a little bit, then anyone else in this meeting is welcome to raise their hand or unmute themselves if you'd like to speak. You're also welcome to share, or write a question or anything you want to share in the chat here in Zoom or on YouTube. In the YouTube comments, I'll check those. If you're watching this on Facebook or Twitch, please just jump over to YouTube for your comments. So it'd be easier for me to just have one location to find them, since I don't have Emerson or anyone helping me today. Yeah, so that's my opening monologue. Let me see. Anyone feel free to...
Missed your opening monologue, Art. Sorry.
Oh, well, I've missed you, Phyllis. It's good to see you.
Hi. I missed the direction we're going in, if there's a direction.
Yeah, there might be an apparent one, but
okay.
I think, let's see. I had a joke about the apparent word. Everything's apparent, and if somebody said, the apparent you, the apparent me, and my joke is, if that person's a mother or father, that's what Tony's really saying there.
Yeah.
We've all been mishearing it all this time.
Exactly. Yeah. We're all parents. Parents are not parents, huh?
He's just biased. He's just biased to talk to mothers and fathers. No.
Yeah, could. Why not? Could be. He's not a parent, huh? That's how he got to be a non-person. First, he was a non-parent. So I guess all the parents gotta wait in line because all the non-parents get to be get the best seats, huh?
Can work that way. Yeah. Yeah. Well. Yeah. Just replying to somebody. Let's see. Does anyone have any questions or anything that's been stimulated by my opening remarks that you'd like to share? Let me check YouTube. Feel free to unmute if you do want to share. On YouTube, I'm going to ignore the compliments or things like that. Or maybe I shouldn't. Phoenix says a very good point, Art. Words. Yes, they're all words. Yeah. Words. It's not what this is about. Even Tony says that. Every speaker says that. Every writer who's ever written about that, this says that. I mean, if the writing's worth its salt, I think that always has to be mentioned. That this is all just a finger pointing at the moon, the words. Sana says, sorry, but what does this have to do with non-duality? Sana, if you would care to clarify exactly what has to, you're referring to, because I said quite a few different things. I mean, words, I think, have to do with non-duality because, like I just said, they tend to be the most misleading part of all of this. You know, if I could just start using the jargon of, you know, Robert Saltzman or Ramana or Tony Parsons, and I could just go down this road of parroting what someone else has said, who's dead or alive. But why would I do that? I mean, if I wanted to do that, I would do it. I don't want to do that. And, you know, something that Robert says that I really like, he says, don't put someone else's head on top of yours, you know? And the Buddha said, you know, really, you have to test this for yourself. You have to look at it for yourself. You can't just take someone else's word for it or repeat their words for it, even though there is no it. But there is an apparent it. Phoenix also says, no, duality is just a word and it really does not mean anything. Or I think they mean non-duality. Even the word non-duality is against its own meaning. Yeah, what I really like about the word non-duality is I feel like it's the best example of how absurd it is, because you can't say the word non-duality without having duality take up most of the syllables. So, you know, I think this is why in the past, you know, I've always preferred words that are just a single syllable, like this, you know. I first encountered that expression. Papaji has a beautiful book of poetry and prose. It's just 100 pages, very short, very beautiful, called This. I highly recommend that if you like, yeah, I just recommend that book. It's just very beautiful, short little poetry about this. And I resonate with the words love, God, you know, sometimes nothing, but, you know, who cares what I resonate with? You know, we
Yeah,
all have.
sometimes, yeah, but Art, I don't know if you remember, but you would get upset when I would say, it's just this, it's this, it's just this. And now you love it, yeah? See?
I don't remember that, Phyllis, but
Yeah,
you know.
it's way back. I say,
Mhm.
just this, just this. And
Yeah, I reach a saturation point with certain language. Like,
yeah,
so when I first heard, well, when I first heard Jim Newman speak, it didn't resonate at all. I thought it was crazy, or I just had no interest in it. And then I don't know, a few months later or a year later, and a lot of people have the same story as me on this, you know, then I heard him talk again and I was like, wow, this is like the most beautiful way I've ever heard this expressed. It was just so to the point, so cutting and surgical and just, you know, I don't know, disintegrating somehow, you know, I mean, yeah, some, you know, often people ask me about what is my story with all this kind of stuff or in general, and I always give a different kind of answer. But last year, yeah, Jim Newman and UG, they felt like these, like the cleaning crew for my mind. It just, listening to them for a few months, it just eliminated all attachment to language, like anything that was still kind of floating around that I felt like, I don't know, I can't even make sense of it, you know. And they would probably disagree that there's any cause or effect there, but you know,
well, I'd
it
say
had,
making sense, not being able to make sense of it is excellent, huh? I mean, when you can't judge any of this, but I'd say if you feel, if the person who is interested in this subject and has resonated with various speakers comes to to a conclusion. Of course, nothing concludes, nothing ends, but has the impression that there is no sense to be made out of this. I'd say that's it too. That's the right, if we could call it the right direction, because there is no sense of this. It's a search for meaning and sense. That there's I'd say the other path, huh? Look for a meaning, sense, goal in your life. Whereas the Newman, Parsons, etc. route is there's no sense to it. You can't make sense out. Why? Who would be there to make sense out of what?
yeah, No, I hear you, Phyllis. I hear you. Yeah, that's not what's resonating for me right now, that way of talking or looking at things. I don't think it's wrong, but I don't think there's a right way. I don't think if you
How
allow me,
about I don't think? How about I don't think? We can even
Phyllis,
name the things.
Phyllis, if you could allow me to just continue.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, yeah, well, that's a continuation of the same way of speaking. I don't think there is no I. There is. I don't like that language right now at all. And yeah, sure, it's true. There is no I, but and there's no thinking. Blah blah blah. I don't know. It doesn't resonate for me right now. Like in that interview or that I was rewatching that discussion with Robert Saltzman and Jim Newman recently, like last night, and they both agreed on everything Jim Newman said from my perspective. And Robert, as Jim Newman said himself, Robert went a step further from the unknowing. And I'm not sure if Robert would agree with that phrasing of it. It's probably a good question for me to ask him in my interview when that happens. But I would just say, like, it's like, just be honest with yourself about what is this experience right now, or this is what this is what's happening here. There's this body, you know, there's a hand that can't move. So I only have one hand at the moment. Hopefully not forever, but it's been about 6 months at this point. But that's what appears to be happening, you know? I mean, it's just, and it's not good or bad. It's not right or wrong. There isn't a right way or a wrong way. Like the seeking is everything and nothing. It's fine. It's great. Like even if it hurts, it's great. I mean, I wouldn't want anyone to suffer. And this is, unnecessarily or, when there's an easy solution in my mind, but everyone's on their own journey. There are, I think what's evident to people watching this who are fans of Tony Parsons and Jim Newman and this, lineage of no concession speakers, as I think they're called now, is that for people who have been seeking really, really intensely and crying and aching and doing 10-hour retreat after 10-hour retreat or for 100 days and water fasting to try to get somewhere, that, yeah, then you hear Jim Newman talk and it's like, yeah, it's all nonsense. Or you hear UG talk and it's all bullshit. And you're like, oh my God, what a relief. This is already fine. This is already totally unknowable. There's nowhere to get. Yes, that's beautiful. But, I guess what I find more exciting here to talk about is, and then there's mountains again. Then it's not just all Brahman and no world, but the world is Brahman. And this is all, yeah, it's unknowable, sure. Carol, feel free to unmute yourself.
Thanks. Art, that was beautiful. That was really beautiful what you just said. So I think I would like to try to focus in on something because I can tend to go all over the map, So I would like to stay relevant to what you're just saying about how you don't like the language. Well, you're not resonating at this time with the language of there's nobody here and what you were saying. And I relate to that. And I think what I would like to put forth as a item of focus is one of the quotes that you had shared from Robert Saltzman about love, about how we all want to love and be loved and have our hearts broken, and then we don't need any more instruction. So do you have that one there, or?
I do, yeah. I shared two Robert quotes from a recent interview he did with someone named Hardy, someone in Germany
Oh,
named
that was a
Hardy.
good one. Yeah, that was really good. Yeah.
Yeah, it was at the very end of this 3 hour long interview that Hardy asked him a couple of very simple questions like, before we end, is there any, if you have one piece of advice, what would it be, or whatever, something like that. And so he gave these two quotes that both I thought were incredible. And I actually think, and I actually like messaged Robert. I told him I thought these quotes are kind of like the perfect expression of like the yin and the yang in a sense. Because one is about the head, the other is about the heart. So, you know. Okay, so I'll read them both because I love them both, and I referenced the first one already. But so this is the first quote. Don't let someone sell your own wisdom back to you. You have the secret to being you. They have the secret to being them. You don't want to take someone else's head and put it on top of the one you already have. And then the other quote that you're referring to, Carol, he said, the most important thing in this life is finding love. Nothing even comes close. Love of another person, of an animal, of humanity. If your heart opens fully and can break, that's really what we need. That's what most of us, not all of us, really want, is to have our hearts broken up, broken open. Because once that happens, you don't need any more instruction. And I agree with that 111%. I mean, again, if anyone was following me on Facebook a few months ago, I did have my heart broken, some sort of relationship, or a couple of them back to back that didn't go well, or no, that went beautifully until they didn't. And then yeah, my heart broke open so much. I just was writing all this poetry about the depression, the heartbreak, and how it opens you up to everything. It's just pure aliveness. It's pure nothing, and then there's the still waters that I'm experiencing right now of just calm. I mean, that's also nothing and aliveness. But I love what Robert said there. I mean, I have a lot of questions for him on that topic. I must say. So I'm excited to talk to him about that. But yeah, Carol, what are your thoughts on that quote?
Yeah, oh no, that's great. I love that. And something that just came to me in the hypnagogic state, sometimes I'll write something down, just between waking and really being awake. And I had written, the beauty of the heart breaks itself, releasing overflowing tears of love and compassion. And, I think the objects of the love are like maybe a portal, if that's maybe not the best word, but where it's a kind of love that goes beyond emotion. It's beyond emotion, and it just goes so, it's like a depth of heart. Because when we use the word love nowadays, it's like a word like God, or any of the other words that really have so many meanings that it's kind of lost, it's kind of lost its way. But what I'm talking about is the depth of love, where it's all inclusive. Just everything is included, and so relating it to the quote, it breaks you open, totally breaks you open to where there's no opposite. Okay, there's no opposites anymore. There's no good, bad, right or wrong, me or you, this or that, and from that infinite wellspring comes everything. It's like the void. It's where compassionate action, right action, everything comes from. I'm more interested in that, in this, than the, going around in circles with the, there is no I, and, at this time. And actually, interestingly enough, I get that from Jim Newman and from Robert. They do have that, the yang, part going strong, but also, if you listen deeply, it just takes it to that like 0 point, that stillness of the feminine also. So that's kind of where I'm at with this, and I hope that made sense. But back over to you, Art.
Yeah, thanks, Carol. Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me, and thank you for sharing that. And I want to reiterate for anyone who maybe didn't get this the first time, I don't think anyone is saying it the right way. And I think a hallmark of a clear teacher, to the extent that anyone is a teacher, whatever the hell this is that they let you know that it's not in the words of what they're saying, or that the words are insufficient. Tony says this. He says, well, maybe something else will happen, but these words are not true, yeah, gosh. Yeah, and so but it's like, yeah, Robert said this interesting thing I haven't fully digested, that I read in his book, because I've been doing all this research for a forthcoming interview, Robert Saltzman. And he said that his opinion or hypothesis is that when people use the word resonate with, what they're usually referring to is something that is basically confirmation bias. It's basically someone repeating what they already believe in a similar or identical way. And so I don't know if that's true or not, but I find it very interesting. My interview with Andrew Kirschbaum is coming out soon. I think probably tomorrow or sometime this weekend. And one of his favorite bands is this band Modest Mouse. And they have this one lyric where they say, everyone wants 2 of themselves and half of everyone else. And I think that's true. It's so true. Everyone wants 2 of themselves and half of everyone else. And we're all narcissists looking at our own reflection, and whether this has any truth in it or not, I love the description that, Bill Hicks said, that so many people say. Nancy Nethercutt says this, that, this is all, life living itself, or the universe thing itself, so this is just a giant feedback loop of for those who saw my recent interview with Tim Kliss, this is all precious bullshit. It's all nonsense. It's all not true. No matter what we say, it can't be true, but it's so beautiful and it's precious. It's just delightful, like the heart, the head, the masculine, the feminine, everything in between, just this Tower of Babel that humans keep building up to infinity with our language that keeps dividing us further. But, the division allows for new things, which is exciting we'd get bored if we didn't have new things. Most of us would. I've been playing with this way of saying things that, like in Zen Buddhism, there's that saying, before awakening, chop wood, carry water. After awakening, chop wood, carry water. I would say before awakening, there is seeking. After awakening, there's seeking. I mean, if there is a difference, in my opinion, from my perspective, it's that there may be no longer an expectation of that ever ending. Randall.
Oh, hey, Art.
Hey.
I just glad I showed up this morning. I kind of felt like I needed some fresh air, sanity, a break from the stuff going on in my head, my life. But I really love the direction the conversation's taking, and I have to go in a little bit, so I just wanted to add my little piece to it. So yeah, I get, like, you know, what all the non-dual teachers are saying. Like, I experience just its existence, beingness is like a miracle, you know, just a simple thing. It's not anything extraordinary. It's just utterly ordinary. And there is no one that experiences it. Like, I totally get that. And yet I have to exist in a world. I have to interact with other beings to get needs met. You know, I cannot exist by myself. You know, that's just a fact of physical existence. And what there is, it's like there's this work. The work is on the spiritual level, the human level, is to deal with what is in front of me every moment. And often that's dealing with, you know, interpersonal human relationships. And for me right now, it's a roommate whom I'm having a lot of contentious interactions with. And she seems to see me as someone who's a problem because of, it's like I'm a man, she's a woman. I don't think she likes men. And I slam doors, and I have different bathroom habits. We have to share a bathroom. And so there's all this, like, you know, messy human stuff that, you know, I have to deal with. And when you said that in that piece, you quoted from about like how we all have a piece, you know, the other has a piece for me that's important, and I have a piece for them it's important. And like, it's, you know, I've been trying to, like, and not trying, I want to just like be open to her and not like judge her for who she is, even if she may be judging me, you know. And you can't do it as like, oh, I'm supposed to be this way, but, you know, like, really be open, like really be willing to just like have my heart broke open by this beautiful, tragic interaction, which is just, you know, incomprehensible, you know. And I don't know what the meaning of it is, but it's like what there is to do, you know, chop wood, carry water, you know, interact, get needs met, because we can't do it, you know, I can do nothing by myself. And so it's like there's always a lesson, there's always something to learn about myself, you know, and someone else, you know. I mean, so that, I just wanted to add that. So that's like the work, you know, like Byron Katie is her thing is about using this inquiry method of the work to deal, you know, to just like be with what is, like what is right in front of me at this moment. So back to you, Art.
Yeah, thanks, Randall. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for being here. Somebody asked if I could share in the chat that quote from Robert Saltzman. Just add me on Facebook, it's on there. As I said earlier, only one hand, and I have to keep focused on what's going on in this meeting, so I can't type out a 100-word quote right now. But yeah, just go on my Facebook. I shared it, I think, 2 days ago. Let's see, add me as a friend. But Sheila, you're already friends with me. Yeah, you said this thing about learning, Randall. You said something about meaning. When you said learning, and this is what I'm saying about the brain. I'm not doing anything, but this brain makes connections, and that's all we can do here. We can do that, or we can play some other game of intention, like let's try to get to the most clear way of putting something that can't be put in words, no matter how clear it gets. Or we could play the game of let's all just be in silence and let's experience the silent presence you know, whatever the hell that means. But, you know, I've felt this. I don't say that to demean it. I say that just to say that it's not a thing, and the word's never it. And a lot of people, everyone's different. Everyone's different. I have a friend who loves to sit in silence all the time. As far as, you know, I'm concerned, she's as awakened as it gets. She has no interest of talking publicly or even going to meetings. She just, you know, lives a quiet life, sits in front of a tree all day. And every now and then I talk to her and I just feel, you know, like I just lost all the weight that I want to lose. Yeah, let's see. Let me look at the other comments here in the chat. There's been about 10 of them. Rajiv wrote, enlightenment is the end of suffering, from the Buddha. Oh, and the mystical side of me likes that you made that comment right at 11:11 a.m. my time, Rajiv, so thank you. Enlightenment is the end of suffering, Buddha. Yeah, and I think that's what Benjamin was telling me, but in a bit more detail, you know, that enlightenment, according to the Buddha, would lack, I guess, like greed, anger, lust. There's like this list of things, and maybe that's a thing, or maybe that was a thing for him, you know. I could go down a lot of tangents around that, but let me see what else is going on here in the chat that I might have missed. Rajiv asks, what is nothinging the nothing? Yeah, great question, Rajiv. I'm not going to try to answer that one, but that's a good Cohen. What is nothing? Yeah, I think you heard me the first time. That's a tongue twister. Randall wrote, nothing and everything has to do with non-duality. Yes, neither and both. Neither nor both, as someone said to me recently. This message is good for chopping heads. Yeah, I would say that's the masculine approach. You're not going to hear that from anyone else yet. Maybe it'll catch on, this yin yang, masculine, feminine framing of things. But I think it's very important because it's, to me, it's just the elephant in the room. It's like how many, you know, like dudes with masculine energy, with more masculine energy, you know, as far as, I mean, and if anyone, you know what I mean by that, I would think, you know, like, are the ones saying this message. And then not just now, but throughout history, you know, the chopping of heads off, the Zen stick. I mean, how phallic of a symbol is that? The hitting people with the Zen stick, you know? I mean, this is all just, I mean, and there's nothing wrong with it, you know? It's like, you know, the rocket sent man to the moon, and, you know, all these phallic symbols got us to where we are now, about to maybe, you know, kill ourselves. So hooray for that. But we have Zoom. We wouldn't have had that, you know? Those rockets also got satellites into outer space and figured out how to make affordable electronic devices where we can all congregate virtually around the world during a worldwide pandemic. So, I mean, how incredible is that? I'm going to look at the YouTube comments. If anyone in the chat or in the Zoom wants to say something, well, I do want to ask more people in the Zoom, because we have quite a few people in here that haven't spoken yet that I would like to ask. But let's see what else was written in the YouTube chat comments. Mark Smith says a few things. Non-duality means not to, absolutely. I mean, the Sanskrit word Advaita is the origin of this word. Yeah, I recently looked up, because I was just curious, when did this word non-duality as an English word become popular? And I think it might have been in 1988. There's a book called Non-Duality that was published by someone, or written by somebody named Gareth Loy, I believe. So I haven't looked into him yet, you know? Probably someone I'd like to interview at some point. I think he's still around doing videos and stuff. Yeah, it's interesting. And the word neo-advaita, that started somewhere too. You know, all these words, it's just new words, because the words are never clear enough, you know? I mean, by the time nothing gets, you know, 10,000 or 100,000 subscribers, there'll probably be some other new school or new lineage that says, oh, nothing, it's so unclear. This new way is so much more on point, so much clearer. I mean, again, the language. Let's see. Mark Smith asks me, am I a no concession speaker? No. And yes. And I hope that's not, an annoying way to answer that question, but nothing and everything, so both. Mark Smith asks, art does not resonate with non-duality. He's looking for a concession so that he can talk about something else. That is a fake. No one has a head. Yeah, I mean, well, I guess that's your opinion, Mark. But if you want to share in the Zoom, Mark, you're welcome to come in here and voice more of where you're coming from there. Yeah, I mean, this, like I said, I just rewatched that debate or discussion between Robert Saltzman and Jim Newman for the third time yesterday, after doing a lot of research into Robert Saltzman's way of talking and stuff. And yeah, it was just very clear to me. I mean, it was clear to both of them. It was clear to the moderators. Everyone was very clear, like 45 minutes in, exactly where they parted ways and what they talked about. Jim, they both got to this point of, this is all unknowable. There's no one here. And then maybe you're right, Robert, about me, and that would apply to Robert. I mean, maybe you're right, Mark, because when you say that you're looking for something you can talk about, like, yeah. But okay, but allow me to make one point, and then I'm gonna let Eligia speak. It's great to have you here, Eligia. Yeah, oh gosh, I might have just forgot the point. Yeah, forget about it, doesn't matter. All right, but thanks for sharing, Mark. Eligia, feel free to unmute and share.
Hey, Art, how you doing?
Hey, buddy, how are you?
Hey, good. Sorry, I jumped in a little late.
No, but it's all good.
Yeah, I was thinking about what you were talking about, the conversation of Newman and the other guy. Also, Jim Newman did an interview with Sam Harris at some point.
Yeah.
And at some point they kind of felt like the other needed to go further. I sensed like they were discussing it.
Well, Eligia, actually, you saying that just helped me get the thought back. Can I finish my thought and then allow you to?
Yes, of course, go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, and I'm probably gonna, at some point, I definitely want to see that Sam Harris one again, because I only heard that when it first came out. And but yeah, so they both agree on there not being anything and there being no one. I mean, Robert absolutely agrees with that. He gets that. But then Robert says, well, you care about your wife, right? And then Jim was very resistant to just going down that road even a little bit for some reason. And that, and that's just where they part ways. If Jim Newman is talking as a public speaker about non-duality, this is why I guess it's called the no concessions thing, because he's always going to speak very clearly about, I think, what has been historically known as the absolute, the perspective of the absolute, or something like that, And then Jim Newman would say, well, it's no perspective and there's no one there. And this is the way that you speak about it. The reason I found that so invigorating when I first found Jim Newman, because it does cut through all the nonsense. It cuts through all the language, but there is some faint remains of language and attachment that can still be there. And I'll give you an example of that. There was someone else who I spoke with, big fan of, Tony, Jim, and all of them. And he said, ever since I found the nothing, everything's great. And he says, all we need to do is add in the nothing and everything's great. And I said, well, what do you mean add the nothing? What is the nothing? And how could you add it? And he didn't reply. But I think this is the danger of any language. That's my point, is that even language that many consider to be the clearest, most bleeding edge way of describing that which is indescribable, you got to let go of all of it. It's a thorn. It takes a thorn to remove a thorn, but you don't want to just replace one thorn with another. Where does that leave you? But anyway, those were my thoughts, Eligio. I went on for a little bit, but go ahead.
Yeah, because I think sometimes when you talk about language, because they can say something, they say a sentence, and then you question him on it, and then the next sentence is the opposite of what they just said. So then in my head, so then it becomes like a game of rock, scissors, papers, where a word compounds the other word, compounds the other word. Anyways.
Yeah, well, that's a great point. Yeah, and this is why I think one of the, like I've said it twice already, I mean, the thing I really value people to say at some point is that all these words are wrong. All of these are lies. All of this is not true. You know, this is a futile attempt. You know, it's like there's this Shakespeare quote about, I need to memorize it because it's so perfect for all this kind of thing, that, you know, it's all the barking or loud noise, you know, made by an idiot for no one, you know. But, you know, yeah, Eligio, I also feel like an element of this is the masculine expression, where it's exclusive, it's reductionary. So like when you have two masculine personalities talking about things in their own language, you know, and I could be included in this because I'm sort of in the middle of masculine, feminine energy by my own, you know, analysis as a relative body, mind, personality. But I mean, I'm saying things with, you know, this, like, this is how I see it. I mean, but I'll also tell you, it's just what, it doesn't mean anything. It's not really, it's not really true. And if someone else says, yeah, but it's this, and I'm like, okay, you know, sure, you know, or maybe I'll disagree. I don't know, but the masculine energy is like, no, not this, not this, not this, not that, not that, not that. I mean, that's the beauty of seeing someone like Jim operate. It's like watching a samurai just chop heads off, and someone says, oh, I think I get it. This is it, right? And he says, nope, there's no one there. No. And then the feminine is the total opposite. It's like, oh, that too, this too.
Right.
This too. It's inclusive.
Yeah. I guess I'm just reporting that because sometimes I'm more of I guess you call it the masculine energy, where it's more like boom, 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 boom. And then sometimes other talkers are softer and they're coming at it for another angle. But it doesn't mean that's wrong either, but it doesn't mean it's right. Something like that.
Yeah. I mean, exactly. It's not wrong and it's not right. I mean, we could just start and end there, but I mean, for the sake of discussion, it's so much fun to just bounce back and forth on these things, you know.
It's awesome.
Otherwise,
it's great.
Yeah.
Hey, can I get your email on the?
Oh, well, like I said earlier, I'm not really checking my email right now. So if you could use, if you don't have Facebook, if you have a friend who has Facebook that could message me, and I'll just give the information to them.
Oh, okay. I'll do it. I'll do it that way.
I apologize for that. I will start checking email at some point. I will create a new email. I'm about to create a new YouTube channel.
No worries. Okay, thank you. I'm not on Facebook, but thank you, Art.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, just if you have someone else's Facebook you could borrow, I'll go ahead and write my email in there, but I'll do that in a minute once someone else is talking. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I want to make sure I pronounce your name correctly.
Yeah, it's Eligio.
Eligio. I'm so sorry for not asking sooner. Eligio.
It's okay.
Right.
I'm used to it. Bye-bye.
All right, thanks. Thank you, Eligio. Let's see. Nikki, you know, I love seeing you. I'm so happy you're here. Just want to ask if you feel like sharing.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Art.
Hey, Nikki. So great to see you.
Oh, it's lovely to see you too. It's lovely to see all of you. And it's a delightful conversation. And it's like you say, there are a lot of blokes that talk about non-duality as in, you know, there's no one here and there's no one here. And I think maybe you have been talking to me about this, but the feminine energy maybe says, okay, if we're just having conversations and there's no right or wrong, the feminine energy can a little bit incorporate the living life happening as well. And the living life being that you are having all kinds of different emotions that are coming up. It's not an over focus in all the emotions that are coming up. It's just that there's a, oh, now this is happening. And now this is happening. Within the silence of nothing happening. And there nobody being there. But yeah, so I think maybe the feminine speakers might be more drawn to sort of flowing with the whole movement of a life existing, you know? So yeah, and I enjoy both thoroughly. So it's not this or that. And I think maybe the reason, I mean, you know, you put something on and you just like put your computer on or something, and then so maybe like YouTube pops up, and then you listen to something and learn about something, what's going on, and it does provoke so many more thoughts, right? So then that thought attaches to this thought and this thought and this thought. Whereas I would think the reason we kind of tune into this is there's such a silence in everyone speaking. It just doesn't, it doesn't hold. It just sort of goes, oh, yeah, oh, yeah, oh. So it's very lovely. And I think it's beautiful to be able to put the computer on and experience this. So thank you, Art, for organizing it and making it happen.
Thank you, Nikki. Beautiful.
Mm.
Yeah, and just so everyone knows, I did an interview that with Nikki that went up a month ago, and I think it was the second interview to go up the same day, so some people might have missed it. So if you missed that one, I highly recommend it. It's one of my favorite conversations I've had with Nikki. And yeah, very well said, Nikki.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I would say, yeah, I think maybe I'll transition this to asking our friend Houston a question to elaborate on what I'm about to say. But yeah, because the silence and the fury, you know, or the sound, I don't know, the silence and the non-silence, it's all just totally, you know, it's all inclusive. It's both. It's, I mean, I know we have Tom here, and Tom, you love listening to Muji, and Muji speaks beautifully, and he transmits a beautiful love, you know, that I know many people around the world resonate with. And, you know, and that's like listening to, just hearing someone else read the words of Ramana Maharshi or Nisargadatta, or, you know, those are some of my favorite experiences. You know, it has not, you could say it has nothing to do with any of this, but, you know, it's also, it's in the silence somehow. I don't know. I don't know. I can't say it better than the way Nikki said it, but I guess I just want to ask this question about both, you know, the silence and the words. What are your thoughts on that, Houston?
Well, as we've had this discussion, it's always, everything's always happening at the same time. It is non-duality, but as people find out, duality is in non-duality. The silence is sounding. You can hear the sound and you can hear the silence if you allow yourself to let your perspective or your attention encompass all that. The best I can, it's an experience, even though there's no one here to have the experience. The experience is happening of silence and sound at the same time, movement and stillness. What makes music work is the silence that's happening at the same time that the sound is happening, and then they separate, and then they come back together, but they're always working at the same time. Our attention doesn't necessarily always go there. It'll either go to one or the other, and then we'll say, well, this person's not really being non-dual, or this pure person doesn't understand. And that's just a matter of focus of my attention at the time. If I expand my attention, I'm able to see both the heads and the tails of the coin. You can't give me one without the other, because that's all non-dual. Everything comes with everything. It's a matter of, the best I can say, whatever my attention is on is what I become aware of, even though there is no me having the experience. And the funny thing that I love about language is we use it to, it was created in a duality situation, meaning and language was created in duality, and yet we try to use it to explain something that's not explainable. And like I wrote in the group, and we've talked about this before, the earth really is round, but everybody acts as if it's flat. So regardless of what we believe or what we say, we act like flat earthers on a round earth. So it's the beauty of language. It's the beauty of nothingness expressing. And then the me or the no me taking it on as a personal meaning, or just meaning that happens to show up. And it sounds confusing, but the further back you get from it, it's there, you're there, depending on perspective. And I don't know how clear that is, but perceptual position determines a lot for everybody.
Yeah, well, Houston, yeah. Eligio says loves what you're saying, and depending on your perception. So going back to that discussion of Robert Saltzman and Jim Newman, they both basically said that to each other in their own way. Jim Newman's language is, I'd say they're both quite surgical with their language in their own way. And Robert just says in a very plain speech sort of way, like, hey, do you love your wife or not? Like, do you, eat breakfast or not? And Jim, for whatever reason, in that discussion with Robert, he just didn't want to go there. I think maybe because he felt like it was I don't know. I don't really know why, honestly. I think maybe because he was talking again from this, he wouldn't say it's a perspective, but he was talking as nothing to nothing, so to speak. And then, but then he did say to Jim, or he did say to Robert at one point, he said, well, Robert, if what happened here happened there, then you would say what I'm saying. And then, or you would see that there's no one saying any of this. And then Robert says, oh yeah, I agree. Jim isn't willing to use the word perspective, because to him, it's not a perspective. To Tony, it's not a perspective. To them, to the non-them, it's, yeah, I don't know.
It's both. It's not a perspective and a perspective at the same time. That's why it's easy to understand it when someone says there's no one here. That's true, because there is until there isn't, and there isn't until there is, because that's what non-duality is. It's everything. It's everything being no thing. It's no thing being everything, appearing as a particular something. Tony says it all the time. No thing appearing as everything.
Yeah. No, exactly. Yeah. Like I've said before, the one time I spoke to Tony for 10 minutes, I think he said at least 10 times in 10 minutes, the exact same sentence. He said, this is no thing apparently happening.
Yes.
I mean, in Buddhism, is it the Diamond Sutra maybe, where it says empty fullness, full with emptiness? Yeah,
All the
yeah. So
all polarities at the same time.
yeah, at the same time, and also neither
Yes.
at the same time. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, thank you, Houston. Thank you for adding to this conversation. Great to have you here. I'm wondering, Jack, if you feel like sharing today.
I'm enjoying listening. I loved what Houston just said. That was so refreshing because if I stay in the both mind frame, it's so beautiful instantly. Because then here we are. Here's us, all of us in our little Hollywood squares. And then we get out and I'm also in the room. And then I get off the line and I go on with my life. But in this moment, it's like we're all passing through each other's quilts. You know, it's like this beautiful tapestry of experience that I have no idea about. Like I don't even get to culminate or surmise or conclude in any way. It's just, here we are, bullets flying through each other. It's really incredible.
Yeah.
Boring, of course, but incredible.
Well, boring to some, maybe exciting to others. Would you like to comment on that Buddha definition of enlightenment?
Well, the Buddha laid it out pretty succinctly in the sutras, which is that if you experience impermanence, no self, or not self, excuse me, and dissatisfaction to be the rules of existence, you will no longer be able to feel anger, greed, or delusion. I'm not enlightened given this definition, and I kind of stay right there. Like, I kind of trust his definition, and if it really is beautifully true, then it's not yet something that applies to me. And I haven't met anyone it applies to either. So it's not, it might be a fantastical, mythical, mystical folly on my part to even consider it, but it does seem like if impermanence truly lands as a feature of reality, then being frustrated with impermanence just wouldn't happen. So I stay there logically, but I don't know if it means anything to do so. I'm just programmed this way. Meet robot.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Jack. Slash Benjamin. Yeah, and if anyone wants to see a video that's called watch somebody become 100% enlightened on camera for the first time ever, look that up on YouTube. There's a rising non-dual speaker who made a video called that. And it's not entirely clear if it's satire or a historical document or a clickbait title. Yeah, Frank Yang, rising non-duality star. Maybe I'll interview him soon. Yeah, so what the hell are we talking about? Mark Smith is pushing back on what I'm saying, which is great. Well, he says not a quote from the Buddha because nobody becomes enlightened. Interesting. Yeah, great point, Mark. And why am I calling you Mark? There's nobody saying this on YouTube, right? Yeah, I guess nobody is saying this other nobody. I love that. You know, it's like when I grew up, I watched the TV show, the cartoon Smurfs, and I really loved the movie Smurfs and the Magic Flute when I was like 5 or 6 years old. It was one of those movies I'd watch over and over and over like kids do. And I always loved how the Smurfs just used the word Smurf for everything. Like, oh, Smurf, to see you. I'm feeling very Smurf today. How are you Smurfing? You know, and like, oh, could you bring me over a Smurf? And some human gets into their village and he's like, what are they talking about? Like, he doesn't know what they're saying. And I love Pokemon for the same reason, that like how the Pokemon little creatures, they only say their own name. I love that more than anything. You know, like Pikachu just says Pikachu to everything. You know, if he's hungry, he says Pika, you know, just saying his name. I love it. Yeah. I once knew well, I'll leave it there. Yeah, let's see, Randy, I don't know if I've met you before. How are you doing today? Would you like to share?
Thanks, Art. I don't know. I don't know what to say a lot of times, so I tend to be silent for these topics. But I felt like you know, telling a little bit of my story, I guess, is the last several months. I don't know, a lot of this message has, if you want to say resonated, yeah, it seems to have resonated and, you know, dropped a lot of the paths that I thought I was on, maybe. The goals that I was getting to had always changed of, you know, whether it was personal or material, and then became spiritual. And then, you know, on this road to forever improving and forever, you know, leveling up and all that. And that kind of, I don't know, it kind of made no more sense anymore. And it's left me a little bit dumbfounded and lost in some ways. So I don't know. That's basically my answer to a lot recently, is that I don't really know. So I'm chiming in, and I tend to enjoy these kind of meetings and the kind of energy that's there, and some of it, yeah, makes me feel awful, and some of it makes me feel horrible, and I tend to laugh at a lot of the conversations or speakers, and I don't know, but I thank you guys and thank everyone for sharing their experience and sharing their thoughts as well. It's been fun, so thank you.
Thanks, Randy. Great to have you here. Yeah. Yeah, so I love it. I love the disagreement. You know, I said in one of my, the topic of one of my discussions a couple weeks ago, like, I'm a musician and I've studied music theory quite a bit the past few years. And I have this book on my shelf called Harmonic Experience. And the history of harmony, which means two notes played at the same time or more, you know, one note is a melody, two or more is harmony. The history of harmony in Western culture is, it's this interesting progression of inclusiveness into what is perceived as harmony. So originally, if you go back like 1,000 years or even just 700 years, to have two notes played at once was considered by the authorities, the Catholic Church, to be an act of heresy. It was always the government and the church that controlled which notes were allowed to be played in music, written about, because all music was written about God. And if you didn't make the music they were used to hearing, they would think, oh, this is the devil's music. And so basically, so music in Western culture, I want to specify that because different heritages around the world have their own evolutions, often involving notes that are just totally outside of the norms and scales of Western music. But like Indian music, for instance, has 24 notes in a single octave, where Western only has 12, as an example. But in the history of Western music, in Europe mostly, so there was first one note, and then they allowed the fifth, or no, I think first they allowed the third, which is, I mean, this is all, I guess I'll try to say this more abstractly, but you know, the third is the note that gives it a mood of being happy or sad, basically, major or minor key. And then they allowed the fifth, and then they allowed the seventh, and on it, or sixth maybe, and then on and on and on. And like and there was a last note to be added. The very last note that was added was called the devil's note, the devil's interval, because it was the most evil sounding. It's the one that Marilyn Manson got famous with. On the beautiful people, that's the note. That was a note that would get you executed, you know, 600 years ago. And if you played it on purpose, or if you wrote it down in a composition. So, but my point being is that all of these notes, like 700 years ago, were considered chaotic. They were considered conflicting. They were considered discordant or dissonant or arguing with each other. They were considered unharmonious. And then it was a shift of perception where they became flavors of what is now perceived as harmony. You know, so yeah, I forget what you said that triggered that thought, Randy, but I just love this idea of you know, it's an all-inclusiveness to me, because it's also an exclusiveness, because there's no right note to play, you know, like Miles Davis said, there's no wrong notes, you know, you play a note that's outside of the norm, you just go with it, and now you're in new exciting territory. And so yeah, as Houston was saying, it's all perception. It's all about our point of view that determines whether a note is perceived as harmonious or not, or whether a word or concept or feeling or expression is, you know, a clear pointer or not, is what I would say. You know, and here's a very clear example of that, you know. So Benjamin or someone was saying how the Buddha said that this is not self, you know, not self. And Ramana used capital S, self, you know. Which one is right? Neither and both. That's what I would say. I mean, they were both pointing to the same thing. They just had opposite perspectives that they were coming from. You could say one was yin, one was yang, but you know, whatever. That's the way I put it, I guess. Let's see.
Yeah, I like that, Art. I like that, where whatever message or whatever from any speaker or teacher or someone who's pointing at that, there always seems to be a level of, you know, well, that's bullshit too, you know. So and right, so who knows, right? It's all, and that seems to be a common phrase of mine is, you know, or just a common thought of, oh, well, that's just, you know, everything just bullshit. And so maybe that's the yang or the negative way of seeing things, of, you know, rather I would love to see the positive more, of course. Oh, everything's beautiful, and instead of everything's bullshit, but you know, there we go.
Yeah, and Houston just wrote in the chat, BS could also stand for belief system. You know, I first heard that, I think when I read Timothy Leary in college, he used that little twist of language, BS is a belief system. Or I think he also used the phrase reality tunnel, because we're seeing in tunnel vision, and something that, you know, we're in this tunnel or that tunnel. It's all, you know, and of course, Timothy Leary was an advocate for the use of psychedelics to break out of one's reality tunnel, which I would say is a very promising and also risky venture, depending on how it's done and who it's done on. But you know, that there's something else I could bring up in a minute, maybe on that topic, but want to maybe throw it to somebody else. Maisie, you just joined. I'd love to hear from you, but if you haven't been keeping up, then, you know, you don't have to, because I know you just joined. Yeah, Robert.
No, I'd love to comment. I just don't know what's happening.
Yeah. Have you been listening in, or did you just start listening?
I just started.
Hi, everyone. Hey, Maisie. Yeah, well, maybe you know, in another 10 or 20 minutes, we'll throw it to you. Yeah, thanks for being here. Let's see, but Walter's here. So, Walter, would you like to share today? Are you able to share? There you are.
Oops. Hello.
Hey.
Oh, I was just listening in from work here. Let me go. Should be okay over here. Yeah. What's happening? It's a good conversation. I've been in and out, but I heard something about a perspective. Can I say something about that?
Please.
I don't necessarily think it's a matter of not willing to concede that I have a perspective. It's just the fact that if there is a perspective coming out, it's not mine. You know, none of these thoughts are my thoughts. They're just what's appearing. So if someone is seeming like they're resistant to saying that this is my perspective or these are my feelings. It's just, I mean, it's just being, I guess you could say, genuine or authentic, or just speaking from a non-perspective.
Yes.
Is that
clear as a bell, Walter?
and that's what I got from that conversation, is that, you know, minds make meaning and give significance to things, and this is happening, but it's an apparent happening, and it's not a happening that I'm creating or that is being created. It's just seemingly what's happening.
Yes, absolutely.
And sometimes those thoughts appear and they could be labeled or given meaning that they are unpleasant thoughts. Sometimes they appear and they're blissful thoughts.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
but they're still not mine. So that's why I would say I can't have a perspective. I can't have anything because there's no I. There's no ownership. There's no authorship. There's just, well, I don't want to say just this. Somebody said he didn't like that. Just kidding. Anyway, that's enough for me. Thank you very much. I'm going to continue to listen.
Thank you, Walter. Great to have you here.
Thank you. We had a really nice conversation the other day. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it too, Walter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. All right. So Phyllis says in the chat, a really great point here. She says, yes, it's the appropriation of what's happening that is the grasping. Yes, ownership is personal. Absolutely, Phyllis. Yeah, I think this became clear to me. I see you raising your hand, Sheila. And before you, I'm going to throw it to Alihio, and then maybe by then we'll see if Maisie has something, you know, to say. But yeah, but, you know, in traditional Advaita, you know, Nisargadatta talks about the three gunas or qualities of existence, which are, I won't say the Sanskrit names because that will just confuse people who don't know them already. But they basically consist of, no, I guess I will, because whatever, you know, I apologize if it is confusing, but tamas, rajas, and sattva. And so sattva is traditionally considered, you know, the sacred, the holy, the witness, the pure, the silence. Rajas is considered action, ambition, activity, and tamas is considered inertia or delusion, or something like this. And those were most clearly elaborated on or redefined for me when I heard Nisargadatta's take on them in his later writings, not in the most famous book he that was published of his, you know, speaking. I Am That. It's not in that book, but it's in his one. Gosh, I don't remember the names of those books, but it's one of his last. It's a book of the last year of his life. Things that he was saying at the end. But he said that sattva is the witness. Well, no, okay, no. He says rajas is what's happening, and sattva is observing what's happening, and tamas is the claiming of what's happening. So this is absolutely what, what Phyllis is pointing to in much simpler, easy to understand language. But when I read that, that's when that really made sense to me. And I don't know, something clicked around it for me, just seeing that like action is happening, apparently, right? And there's the observation of it, apparently. But the moment that we claim it, I claim it as I did that, you know, I take credit for it. And that's where the confusion, that's where the suffering really seems to stem from. That's what seems to drop away upon, awakening, for lack of a better word. And yet it's still there for the mind. That's the thing. The mind is still doing its thing. And it's also still there in the convention of language. Like Jim Newman says himself, he doesn't drop all the I's and me's. He doesn't add the word apparently after every single sentence. He says he can't stand Advaita speak. He thinks it's silly. That's what he calls it, Advaita speak, or non-dual speak. So, we still use these expressions for convenience, but there is a sense, it's seen that there's no real like, oh yeah, where's art? It's like, okay, there's this body, you can call that art, that's appearing here. It's going to die one day. But what is this body? I don't know what the hell this body is. Doctors have their opinions. Everyone has their own opinion on it. Nobody knows. Nobody knows what anything is. So, but it's a lot of fun to pretend we do and talk about it. Eligio, are you still there? Would you like to?
Yeah, I'm here. You said something earlier that caught my attention about the use of psychedelics. And I don't know if that's a topic that's discussed in these talks or not. Sometimes I don't hear it too much. But what is your perspective on that? Because this is what I, this is what I used to think. I used to think, use the psychedelics to get you there to the perspective where the shatter of the me and the my stops. Get you there through that, the psychedelics, and then you can find it. That's what I used to think. What is your perspective of that? Is that helpful or not helpful? The use of psychedelics.
Yeah, great question, Eligio. Thanks. So at the start of my spiritual, I lost half the audience right there, spiritual. But on the start of my whatever journey, it was spiritual seeking. I mean, that's what I'm talking about, 20 years ago or whatever. It started with psychedelics. It started with taking acid and mushrooms and ecstasy in college. And because I was very depressed before then, and I was seeking some deeper, thing about life that I wasn't getting from anywhere. And those drugs gave me a glimpse of something. And I didn't want to rely on any drug to, it felt like a horrible prison to just like be chained to needing a drug to experience that for just 6 hours or whatever, or a day. And there's lots of side effects to all those drugs that I did not enjoy, like anxiety and discomfort in the body and, paranoia, all sorts of things. And so basically, sorry, my somebody is here to help me, this one.
Also, Art, can I add one more thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
To my question. The other thing is that's a legitimate glimpse, or is it just my perspective imagining another perspective of me not being there? But it didn't feel that way for me when that would happen. You see what I'm saying?
No, I get all of it, Eligio. Thank you. So, so anyway, I was going to bring this up earlier, or I mentioned earlier that I wanted this topic to come back up so I could, there's something else I wanted to say, a bullet I had in the chamber, so to speak, on this topic. So I appreciate you bringing it back up, Eligio. And before I say that, just once I stopped, whatever, drinking, smoking weed, drugs, and psychedelics, and I was a really adamant practicer of Hermeticism and Kabbalah and a few other things. I considered myself a Hermeticist for the first couple years of this, story of awakening or whatever. Like Gurdjieff was one of the people I followed, and he said that throughout all of the all the mystery schools that he was a part of and aware of, psychedelics were only ever used, if they were used at all, they were only ever used to give someone a glimpse of like the next stage of awakening. Of course, now we're talking about stages, so forget everything I just said, but it's just another thought that came out. I recently encountered this video on YouTube you could look up if you Google it. I don't necessarily recommend looking it up, but I could just summarize it. But it's the Harvard Psychedelics Society. It's a lecture about psychedelics from this group at Harvard of students. And I forget the name of the guy who's the head of it, but he came up with this really intriguing theory of how psychedelics work. And he also applies this to things that could be experienced with non-duality or meditation and things like this. And basically he came up with this term neural annealing. Annealing is a word that's used in metal forging. And so it's when you heat up a metal really hot that you change the chemical, it turns into liquid metal. And then you put two metals together while they're both molten, and basically their molecular structure will change. You know, when they get to this very high temperature where they're kind of semi-formless, and then as they cool down, a new structure is solidified. And so he used this as a metaphor for what happens specifically on DMT, but I think this could be applied to all psychedelics, where at the peak of the experience, there's a reaching of there's an experience of pure unknowing, of pure information overload, of pure chaos, you know, just nothing to latch on to, no one to hold on to anything either. But, you know, as I said before, I mean, these drugs, at least in my experience, all have side effects of body discomfort to some degree. But you could also he described this as this could also be experienced through great trauma. That's another route. They describe this chaos being experienced, so like the death of a loved one or something like this. And so the idea here with the analogy is that you know, once this chaos is reached, as one comes down from that peak, then there's more order involved. Then there is a sense of self that sort of creates a story around it all and tries to make a story out of that chaos and information overload. And this is basically a restructuring of the mental map, you know, a restructuring of, you know, the thought structure. And so my answer to your question is your second question is basically, you know, the peak of that experience is apparently contacting a very similar place to this, you know, that is spoken of on this channel. But, you know, what happens is you come out of it and there's all this tension in the body. And then it's like, oh yeah, I had this experience. I talked to a bunch of gnomes. I was in a backwards Bugs Bunny cartoon. I was on an alien spaceship in the future in another dimension, or, you know, God spoke to me, whatever. It's, you know, that being said, if you haven't seen my interview with what's his name? Frank. Yeah, Frank talks about his own experience with 5-MeO DMT. He made a documentary about him and two other buddies of his just going on an adventure. And in the documentary, they have a supervised mushroom trip first with Kenneth Madden acting as the babysitter who's not tripping. And then they go off and then they find this shaman who they have 5-MeO DMT with. It's a very interesting documentary called 5-MeO. So I recommend that documentary as well. But so I would say that at best, psychedelics give a glimpse, but, you know, but then that glimpse, like Phyllis was saying earlier, you know, gets claimed very quickly, you know, gets claimed as I am experiencing this, or this experience is blank. I am tripping. My brain is weird, or, you know, people have a lot of ways of putting it, and none of that can be true, you know?
Yeah, or I found the way is what I was saying. I found the way. I found the solution, but it never was.
Yeah, but here I'll tell you my own story. The last time I took acid, like 10 years ago, I mean, I was writing on some newspaper on my wall, like these profound, insights at the peak of the experience, or maybe just below the peak, probably, when I could start to write something and I wasn't overwhelmed in that information overload stage. I wrote down, there is no time, there is no space. And it was clear as a bell to me in that moment. And then the next morning, and I thought if I wrote it down, I would be able to hold on to it. But it doesn't work that way. The next day I was like, wow, how on earth did that make sense to me last night? Yeah. Yeah. So,
I've had those experiences. You're like, what the heck was that? What did I write down?
Yeah. Yeah. If only it was that simple. And this is why there are, like committed groups of psychedelic seekers who want to keep exploring that space and seeing what they can get out of it. And, more power to them. I mean, I think it's something that has a lot of potential for therapeutic use alone. So, I mean, and as long as it's done in a supervised or safe manner with people who, I don't know. It's playing with fire a bit, but these are just my thoughts. I don't advocate, anything for sure. I don't advocate non-duality. I don't advocate DMT. I don't advocate anything. I'm just saying whatever what did Jack call it? A robotic meat suit is saying. Yeah. Tom.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Alihia. Thank you. Tom, you have your hand raised. And then we'll go to Sheila, because I know you had your hand raised.
Yeah, I don't know if I can share anything. It's worth sharing about mushrooms or DMT mushrooms. I would say it is it. When I had mushrooms first time, I don't know, 20 something years ago, I just disappeared, completely disappearance of ego, very pure, no any hallucinations. No, yeah, I had to go through some crap as well through my childhood to see all this what happened to me. And at the end, I just see nothing ever happened. Nothing ever happened. Absolute emptiness of everything for hours, just laughing. And next trips were even more pure, without the childhood, without the karma, visions, hallucinations about universe, how it works, how the karma works. It was just disappearance. Mushrooms, next half an hour, let's go for a walk. Empty, absolutely empty, just so. So and about what stays in you after the trip, it stays a lot. If you have proper so-called trip or travel when you completely disappear, it stays with you for the rest of your life. At least it stays with me, and few human beings I know they keep looking for it till nowadays, like me, for instance. Otherwise, I would never know what they're talking about, what it means. Meat without ego, without anybody inside. Oh my God. Now I think I got good skin, and it's just the most beautiful few, I don't know, hours or several hours in my life. You cannot explain, you cannot express. There's no words to call it. And you can talk about it for hours, days, years. I can talk about it. I would never stop. It's just so beautiful. Especially when you got somebody to listen, I just can talk and talk. So you see it for split second. There is nothing to see, nothing ever existed. And you can talk about it because it's absolutely endless. Whatever you talk about, it is it. Like jazz, yeah, you cannot go wrong. Yeah, like we said, Miles Davis, you cannot go wrong because all these days. Yeah, that's the mushrooms. DMT I just tried recently. It's another disappearance, a bit different, more chaotic, hallucinations, and in the end you disappeared completely as well. I repeated Nama Amida Butsu mantra for years. It just came itself. I just don't have to think about it, just in my mind all the time. So when I had the DMT trip, it just, the Nama Amida Butsu came to me like it was opening, and in the end it just showed that it's not name of Buddha, it's just emptiness itself. And all my life I repeat this Nama Amida Butsu for so many years, and I always thought it's name of the Buddha, great things to Buddha, and no, it's just emptiness, absolute emptiness. It's not name of anything. And when I noticed this, I disappeared as well completely. the name disappeared and I disappeared. Yeah. But it's different than with mushrooms. I think mushrooms are, to me, was more profound. It stays with you. I was just smiling for months. I couldn't stop smiling just thinking about it. With DMT, it seems to disappear more quickly.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you, Tom. Thank you for sharing.
I hope it's not oversharing.
Not at all. Not at all. No. But yeah, we have 15 minutes left, and I want to try to
thanks.
get to everyone. Yes. No, that was wonderful. Thank you so much, Tom. Yeah. And I apologize if you can hear noise in the background. It won't last long. I don't know if you can. But yeah, my experience is dramatically different from what Tom described. So I just want to say I absolutely do not advocate any use of psychedelics. That's a very personal choice. And I do think they should be legal. I understand there is a risk by me admitting I've done something illegal, 10 years ago or whatever. But I mean, maybe I'm just making up stories, blah, 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 but, maybe I didn't do anything. But actually with mushrooms, I only had horrible experiences. I absolutely did not laugh once. I cried, I was terrified, and I did it multiple times. And I would say the majority of the acid trips I took were also very, I don't know, like almost trauma inducing. And for me, DMT was much more pure, but also I think I was in a very different mind state. And I don't think any of this stayed with me personally. Whatever I quote unquote got out of those experiences, it all just, like I said, I didn't know what the hell that meant the next day, what I wrote on my wall. So yeah, just want to say that. And I want to, hopefully we have time for everyone who wants to speak still, because I see another person just unmuted, John. But John, I have to go to two other people before you that have been waiting. So Sheila, please.
Hi.
Yeah. Hey.
I never took any. The only times I took psychedelics, I took a little bit of a patty bud and a little bit of, what do you call it? The C word, the powder, Anyway, cocaine, yeah. And it made me feel like I feel anyway without it. So I decided that if I wasn't going to take a bunch of stuff that makes me feel more like what I feel anyway, and that it might not be good for me. I smoked until I got paranoid and I stopped, which is part of the reason he's my ex-husband. I wanted to reply to Carol. I hope you're still there. I agree very much with the yin perspective is different. It's not a bunch of words, and it's where the poetry and the art and the beauty are. And that's where I like to reside. I have to pay bills like anyone else, but I mean, I guess anyone else. You said something Art said something about a lady that does nothing but sit under a tree.
Well, that's not entirely accurate. She does have a job and she does visit. She talks to me on the phone and other people every now and then.
Oh, well,
she spends almost all of her free time just sitting in silence under a tree in front of her where she lives.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
It's just, is she near you in Texas, in Austin?
No. I just don't want to put her name out there in the context, but you
No,
and I.
No, not asking.
Yeah. She's chosen not to do interviews so far, so just want to.
I don't want to poke her.
Yeah. Well, Sheila, if you have anything else to say, I still want to get to two more. I apologize for rushing you a bit.
I want to say something. Yeah. I have no interest in psychedelics, and you guys go. Anyway,
yes.
I was going to say that I would like to be alive to talk about breathing and laughing and I wrote something in comments, which 1879, a strange name for everyone, liked, and that was I was into collecting beauty, and now, and then Phyllis, I think, said something about possessions, and so right now I'm giving things away, and I'm trying to honor them. Some of us, some people honor things, and I honor my body, don't you? You know, it's a thing. It's a thing like the body. It belongs somewhere, not with me, maybe. Well, not with me for very much longer. So, and I have no children. So maybe I'll start selling stuff to people who actually want them, or.
Well, Sheila, I heard of recently, a friend of mine told me that most major cities or cities in general there's a Facebook group for most cities called Buy Nothing, I think, where everyone in the group is only allowed to give things to other people, and there's no trades allowed, no buying or selling allowed. And it's a very interesting dynamic that you might want to look into if there might be one of those in your area.
Yeah, well, I'd like to give to people who want them to you for themselves, not to sell on, you know?
Well, yeah, no, exactly. And you could share in that sort of group for that exact end. But yeah, but thank you for sharing, Sheila. I still want to get to two more people before we end here.
What?
I think it's called Nothing, but I'll confirm that and tell you later. Yeah.
You can send me an answer to my other question and this question later. Bye-bye.
All right. Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Sheila. Great to see Terry there for a minute as well, across the, looks like your dinner table.
He's gone. We're doing things. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye. Thank you. I liked his suspenders. Yeah. But something you said, Sheila, that I like that ties in with the yin yang thing is, I'll just say briefly, is the I like this idea of one example of a historical matriarchy, which are quite rare historically in the last 2,000 years, is certain Native American tribes, I think in the Ontario region, maybe, that had a matriarchy sort of governance. Like there was a basic culture and yeah, to at the end of somebody's life, all of the wealth they had accumulated, like the sign of the sign of greatness that they showed was to give it all away before they died, was to give everything away back to other people. And this actually gave them this higher social status. So it was actually rewarded as well. It's just very interesting, the matriarchal approach, very different from, our current patriarchal one.
People gave things away, and it gave away all their possessions. It gave them status, and it wasn't done just at their death. It was done.
Right. It could be done multiple times in a life, even. Yeah.
It was called potlatch.
Yes, it was. It's the Northwest. And
yeah. All right. Yeah. All right. So Maisie, Sheila said this thing about when she, did those substances, she felt like she was already in a state. And I think I told you in our interview that when I smoked DMT, I had just undergone some sort of awakening, and the DMT just felt like what I was already feeling. Maybe like I was at 95% of that, and then the DMT made it feel like, yeah, this, like, why do I need this? This is just life. I mean, but in that same interview, you talked about your experience with ayahuasca. Would you like to share any thoughts on this topic of the relationship between, the shift that you've experienced this past year, after all that stuff, and what you experienced during those psychedelic experiences?
Okay. So I think that, okay, one comment I'm going to make about drugs in general, like I've done quite a few of them. And I would say that like every drug is different for everyone. And so it's like, especially with psychedelics, I think it's really, it's not, we like no one can validly say like, this is what you're going to experience when you do mushrooms, because that's not always true. Like some people, like I had a great time on ayahuasca. Ayahuasca for me was a really, really like kind drug. It was like okay, like an accurate, and to me, what I perceive as accurate, an accurate description of an ayahuasca experience for me was like that ayahuasca shows a person to themselves, and I found that to be very true. But it was very kind. Like a lot of people are really scared, I guess, of ayahuasca because they hear of like all these terrible stories and people vomiting and stuff like that. And yeah, like that does happen. But for me, it was like it was super pleasant. And like I can't say anything in particular as to why, because I mean why it was pleasant for me is specific to me, right? I have done some drugs as well that I've taken them and I'm like, I feel the same. I'm like, cool, that's cool. And so then I've decided to not do those drugs anymore. But yeah. Commenting on what was said earlier, I'm sorry, I don't remember who it was. But they were talking about how, oh, it was Elihu, and he was asking about why, like whether or not it is an actual seeing, like an actual vision of like what you're seeing of this nothingness or whatever it is you guys are thinking you see. And I think it's not, like there's no way for anyone to say that like it is real or that it's not. But in the end, from my perspective, like your experiences are like your experiences, and so there's no way that anyone can ever say that that's not entirely real or it's not entirely not real.
And on the topic of you know, let's say if there is a non-dual perspective that you're seeing or that no one is seeing, how did those experiences with psychedelics relate to the way you see things now, since you've seen through the sense of a separate self?
It's actually okay. It's a bit, I feel like it's probably a bit more complicated of an answer for me, because previous to doing psychedelics specifically, previous to doing any psychedelics, I had this like huge traumatic loss of identity. And so when I did psychedelics, like it allowed me to integrate that huge loss of identity like into objective reality, however you want to define that. Like it allowed me to take all this stuff that like going from like a me, like a person who was defined as like a dualistic or whatever, like me at that time, and then lost everything. And then I was in a state where I was like, what the hell? And then when I did psychedelics, like it allowed me to integrate this, like all this shit that had happened, and then like integrated into a more whole reality.
Wow.
Yeah. One other comment I wanted to make on what you said earlier. I'm not as good at like as repeating facts and people and when they were written or whatever as you are, and I'm jealous of your skills. But you were talking about how with psychedelics, that the idea is that it basically just like opens your mind a lot so that you can you referred to it was neural annealing or something like that.
Yeah, neural annealing. So it's like the mental map gets turned into a molten form and then it reforms into a new structure.
Yeah, and I totally believe that happens with psychedelics as well. Also, a researcher and author named Michael Pollan, he wrote a book called How to Change Your Mind, and in that book he ended up asking people to do research, and he ended up getting research about like here's a map of your brain, like when you're thinking about things, and like those lit up pathways, and those like show what you normally think about. And then like he showed a brain on psychedelics, and it's like times 1,000. So like there's 1,000 pathways lit up. So it was actual like scientific proof that it actually is your mind just expanding and being able to make more connections.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, thank you, Maisie. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if I.
Yeah, and I don't feel too bad if you don't remember facts and people as well as I appear to you, because none of them exist anyway. Yeah, just a silly non-dual joke. I see you're unmuted, Jack. Would you like to bring us home today? Would you like to say?
I love what Maisie, what you just said about experience is unverifiable. I think that's so true, and that's sort of the ground of everything. Is I can't check on my own experience, and I can't check on anyone else's apparent experience. So that seems to be the end of the puzzle. It's just I can't check. So I love that you bring that up, because that's such a relaxing point for me anyway.
Yeah. Thank you, Jack. And John, I did want to give you a chance to say something before we end. This is your first time here in this meeting, I think. Are you there, John? Would you like to say something before we end? If you're there still? Okay, maybe you're away from the computer.
Can I just ask how to join this meeting in the future, because I just found you accidentally today?
Yeah, well, I posted in the chat. Yeah, you'd have to contact me on Facebook.
I don't have Facebook.
I know you don't, Tom. Using someone else's Facebook account, have them message me and I'll tell them, and they could tell you, or email me and maybe you'll get lucky and I'll actually check my email. But I have to be honest. I have to be honest. I only ever check Facebook and texting. So it's just what it is. For now, I mean, with only one hand to use, it's like an economy of what I choose to use with that hand. Because yeah, that's the best I could explain it. Yeah. But okay, so we're at 2 hours and 1 minute, and I feel like this was an awesome meeting. I want to thank you, everyone, for being a part of it. Yeah, feel free to unmute and say bye if you want. And thank you, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you, Art.
Bye, thank you.
I hope to catch you. I'm not on Facebook either, but I hope to catch you. See you.
Good to see you.
Thank you all. Thanks.
Thanks,
you, everybody.
All right. See you again next time.
Thank you. Bye.
Can't see even the Facebook.